Hello, welcome everybody. Gonna go ahead and introduce our speaker today, Alan Whipple. He's with the North American Server Security Team with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and he'll be going through what HPE has been doing to help keep business data safe for all sizes of businesses, and really kind of speaking to the policies behind some of those decisions, and walking through what some of that technology actually does to keep your data safe. So just to make sure that we have enough time today for a Q&A session at the end, we tend to like to have about 10 or so minutes at the end where you can ask questions. I do want to get us started pretty soon here. But as a quick introduction, my name is Christopher Walls. I'm with NetGain Technologies, and we're a managed service provider who provides IT services and security services to small and medium-sized businesses throughout the southern United States and Midwest United States as well. Um, so just a few housekeeping items here. Uh, you should see on your panel, your GoToWebinar panel, a chat area and also a questions area. I'll be monitoring those throughout the webinar today. Like I said, we will have probably about 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to go through any questions you may have. Please feel free to put in those questions at any time as they come up, and we'll just hold them until the end and go through them then. Also, please feel free to use the chat. You can ask a question there if that's easier, and I'll monitor that as well and make sure that Alan gets any of those questions at the end of his presentation. So with that, again, I'd like to introduce Alan Whipple with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and he is with the North American Server Security Team. And with that, I'll kick it over to you, Alan.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here today with NetGain Technologies and to discuss our compute security message from HPE. And so I'm going to go through a lot of different aspects of security, but I'm going to really hone in on the compute side of the house. Of course, we have networking and storage devices, but I'm going to talk about what we're doing in the compute side of the world when it comes to security. Are you fully utilizing your HPE servers to get the best security protection as possible? How do you start adopting a zero trust mentality? Things of that nature. So definitely want to keep it high level, but give you just a little bit of technical information and background to help you make some more informed decisions in your move forward strategy. And of course, you can work with NetGain to assist you with that, as they're one of our great partners with our products as well. So let's jump in and let's have some fun today. So the first thing I want to do is I really want to talk about what's going on in the world right now when it comes to compute security, when it comes to cybersecurity, and what are cyber attackers doing? What do we need to be aware of? So a couple market trends for you. I don't want to bore you to death with statistics, but it does paint the right picture. So it's not surprising to me, as I've been in the security role for about 5 years now, but cybercrime is expected to reach $10.5 trillion by 2025. And the bad news is that number is continuing to climb year after year after year. Why? Because cybercrime is a very lucrative business. You essentially can have people who sit behind their computer screens and all they have to do is be successful one time to have a very nice payday. And we're also seeing now that the average cost of a data breach is $4.35 million. So if that number alone doesn't get your attention to say, wow, I have to do everything within my power to prevent a cyber attack, I'm not sure what will. I'm not going to go through the rest of the statistics on that slide, but one other one that catches my attention often is 15% year over year cybercrime growth for the next 5 years. And that ties into that $10.5 trillion number. So we are now past that stage of, I'll deal with a cyber attack if it happens to me. Realistically, we have to think this way. A cyber attack is going to happen to me. What am I going to do? What is my strategy to recover and get my infrastructure back up and running? That's how we have to start thinking. It's going to happen. What protocols do we have in place to be successful in recovering? To that point, here's a slide that just really demonstrates another year of relentless attacks. These are just a few. It's quite often I'll just go online and I'll research the latest cyber attacks, and it's pretty astounding how many companies not only faced a cyber attack, and not to pick out companies on this slide, but T-Mobile just read yesterday that once again they suffered another cyber attack, so they are a repeat offender. The moral of the story is, you suffer a cyber attack and you successfully recover, that's great news, but that doesn't mean that you're now invincible from future cyber attacks either. So our goal at HPE, at NetGain, to help you not be on this list, right, of this ever-growing list of companies that have suffered cyber attacks. We find that when we talk to our customers, very important, such as yourself, we hear a lot of important things from their point of view. And the number one most alarming statistic out of everything I talk about today is the one that you see on the left hand of this slide. There will be 3.5 million open cyber roles in just 2 years. That makes me nervous. Why? Because the knowledge and the talent gap is huge when it comes to cybersecurity. So A, if you're a cybersecurity specialist on the call today, you can jockey a little bit maybe for a raise. And B, you have great job security moving forward. But for those customers who are listening today, just make sure that you take care of your cybersecurity resources. And also, we want to help you get the best out of your HPE servers as well. So we need to make sure we're maximizing all the security capabilities that come with our hardware, as well as the software that goes with that. And one thing that's actually encouraging to me on this slide is on the right-hand side, security budgets are now 15% of total IT spend. I feel like for the longest time we were pleading, please beef up your security. The message is loud and clear now. Everywhere I go, security is usually one of the number one topics that our customers want to hear about and what they can do better. That's why you're here today on this call with HPE and NetGain. So what are some of those specific challenges? I'm going to jump into this in just a moment. The buzzword, zero trust. What does that even mean, right? That's the word that's being thrown around everywhere. Security as it relates to the cloud. I would bet that all of the customers on this call, you're using the cloud in some form or fashion, right? You're either using applications that utilize the cloud, or your devices are already in the cloud. Then we deal with remote work, right? That's a little bit old of a narrative, but when COVID happened, remote work was a big deal. And all of a sudden there were all sorts of security gaps when you're connecting these devices that are not in your internal network and things of that nature. So we have to be ready for this digital transformation that's already happening. We have to be ready to adopt a zero trust mentality. Before I jump into that topic, because I love talking about zero trust, I want you to know that at HPE, a big piece that goes along with security is compliance and regulation requirements. So some of you on the call might be in certain industries where hey, I'm in healthcare, so I know HIPAA, or I'm in the finance industry and PCI, security standards are very important, NERC, DFARS, etc. We are dedicated to compliance and regulation at HPE. In fact, we have a dedicated team. So more often than not, we're already going to have those regulation requirements met. But if not, please reach out to me and my team, and we'll make sure that you are taken care of, because that's a very important part to everything that we do at HPE. In fact, we know that there's a lot of new presidential orders, even within the last 1 to 2 years, that are saying, hey, where possible, we need to procure assembled in the USA products. We have those offerings that I'm going to talk about as well. So zero trust, we've arrived, right? And in just a few moments here, after another slide or two, we're going to throw a poll out there about your your level of comfortability with zero trust. But what does it mean, right? It is kind of a buzzword, but it's actually pretty simple when you break it down. So let me talk about how we have approached security in a traditional sense. And that's really like looking at a vintage castle, right? A medieval castle. What was the goal of these castles? The goal was to keep intruders and bad guys from coming into the castle. So just like on this screen share, what do? You build a moat around it. You protect it with water. You put guard towers up all around 4 corners of the castle. You have a drawbridge that controls who comes in and out of that castle, all for the goal of saying no bad guys in. Well, that's a great traditional way of protecting, and that's how we've protected our data for such a long time. We've said, you know what? I've got a great firewall. Nobody's getting through my firewall. My network security is robust. Well, guess what? That's a great starting point, but that's just the beginning of the security journey now. How often are you actually checking the people inside the castle? the applications, the things that are happening inside the castle. That's what zero trust is really all about. Let me build out the slide for you. It's never trusting, it's continually verifying, not just those who come from the outside, but those who are inside the castle, whether it's the hardware itself, the applications, the containers, the data, it doesn't matter what it is. That is what zero trust is all about. We're never going to trust you are who you say you are. We're going to continuously verify. Think of it this way, like going to the airport, think of all the steps you have to go through to continually validate you are who you say you are. From going through the security checkpoint to getting on the plane, there's all these continuous validation checks. That's that zero trust mentality that we talk about. So remember, it's not just your firewall. It's not just your hardware or your applications. It's the data that's in flight that's moving. It's the people. It's everything. That's really what zero trust is all about in a nutshell. Now, of course, it's a very robust conversation, but when you apply that to the IT world, that means, okay, we start with the supply chain. Do we know where we're getting our products from? What about the hardware itself? Do we know how secure that is, which I'm going to talk about on the HPE side today? And then you go up the stack, which I have a slide to show you in just a moment. But I'm going to stop. We're going to throw a poll question out there about zero trust, and then I'll pick back up after that poll question.
Hey, this is Chris again at NetGain. You should see on your screen in just a moment a quick question about zero trust cybersecurity policies, and if you or your organization uses one, or if you maybe don't know if you do. So I'm just going to give about a minute here for folks to get an answer in, and then I'll actually share the responses as well. So it looks like most people have gotten their vote in. Quite a few so far. 75% have said yes, and nobody has said they do not know. So let's give another couple seconds here, and I'll go ahead and close this out. And let's take a look at the results for just a second here. So yeah, as I said, 75% said yes, you do use a zero trust policy, and 25% for no. So I'm going to kick it back over to Alan so that we can take a look at how HPE is implementing some of that. So there you go, Alan. You should have control again. There you go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, so if you're a few of those who answered, I'm not sure, not exactly sure if we have a zero trust, strategy, begin that journey, right? Don't be ashamed. That's why you're here on this call today, to learn about what we can do to have more than just firewall security or network security, right? How do we start that zero trust journey? NetGain is here to help you with that. And of course, HPE, we're very keen on security, which you're about to see. So let's jump ahead now. So this is another way of kind of showing that castle analogy that I showed you, but we just want you to know HPE is leading the effort by designing our platforms first, built around zero trust. And I'm excited to get into the platforms. I'm not going to get too technical, but I want you to understand what you get when you buy an HPE server, security specifically, okay? But once again, we start with the firmware, the hardware, the silicon, which I'm going to get to, which is that big bubble right in the middle of this slide. But we have lots of untrusted things in this zero trust model. Think of employees and partners, all the various devices that come in, things. And then when you work through HPE and you work through our hardware, we're going to help you get to that trusted state. And so zero trust can be overwhelming. That might be what some of you are feeling right now. Like, we just don't know where to start. Start with NetGain, start with HP, start having those conversations, and we'll help build out what that structure looks like, okay? But as I was alluding to, this is really where you start. If we look at the bottom of this slide, we're going to start at the supply chain. Security is only as good as where you're getting your components and knowing that they are indeed secure. And we've got you covered at HPE. The supply chain and who we use as our vendors is very important to us. We only work with TAA compliant countries, which is the Trade Acts Agreement. We have very strong SBC guidelines in place with all of our vendors, meaning we do random audits. We make sure their facilities are indeed secure, so we can source components from them. We don't just take the cheapest components that are out there. So rest assured, with HP, the supply chain security piece is pivotal and huge to us. Then we actually get into the hardware, which I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about today. So you know that when you buy HPE servers, you're going to get the very best when it comes to security capabilities. But as we go up the stack, we then need to know, what is our security like once we install an application on the server? So think of VMware, Microsoft. And then beyond that, what about the data? What about the platform? What about containers that we're now spinning up? Security is a bottom to top approach. You start with the supply chain, you go through the hardware into the apps. You have to have every layer secured. It's not just saying, hey, I have servers that are amazingly secured. That's a great starting point, but that's just where we begin, right? We need to make sure we're securing data in flight, data at rest, the devices that we're using, the applications, and so forth. So don't want to belabor the point per se, but just wanted to show the slide to let you know it's more than just one area. It's the entire stack. Now I get to have some fun and talk about what are we doing for you at HPE when you buy our servers. What kind of security capabilities are you getting? The simple answer is a lot, but I'm going to go deeper than that. I'm going to walk through exactly what you're getting. I'm not going to get technical. It may sound technical for a minute, but I want you to really understand what you're getting, or if you're already using our servers, hopefully I can give you some hints to some settings that you maybe haven't enabled or turned on. But our security messaging is all around being fundamental, uncompromising, meaning we are 100% dedicated to security. We're not going to cut corners. We have to have an uncompromising solution, and a solution that protects you and protects your data, right? This is the bad news. There is no solution in the world that you can adopt and say, I'm completely bulletproof. Unfortunately, that's the cat and mouse game we play with security with cyber attackers, right? We come out with our very best efforts. They're going to come back out with their very best efforts, and we go back and forth. But what we want to do here at HP is give you products that help you avoid being the low-hanging fruit from cyber attackers, right? Being that target where they say, oh, this is such an easy in, I've got this. We want them to look at your environment, your HP servers, your setup, and say, man, that's ridiculously hard to hack into. I don't have this amount of time. So to help you understand that, I want to give you just a quick history lesson. 6 years ago, we launched our Gen 10 servers. And then 2 years ago, we launched our Gen 10 Plus, which is an enhancement to our Gen 10 servers. And now just barely, we launched our new generation Gen 11 servers. But the reason I show you this little history map here is Gen 11 was a game changer when it came to security specifically. And we introduced a lot of features that I'm going to talk about, but I share this because I want you to go through this journey with me real quick. What did we do that was so different and impactful with Gen 10, and how are we building upon that? So now that we're at Gen 11, it's not replacing Gen 10, it's building upon that security legacy that we've started, right? So I'm not going to read through all these bullet points because we're going to cover these. But if you have Gen 10 servers today, fantastic, you're building upon that. If you're still at Gen 8, Gen 9, or you're looking to do a server refresh, NetGain can help you. They can place you in Gen 10, Gen 10 Plus, or Gen 11. All three of these platforms are still live and well at HPE. Okay, so here's our history lesson. This is a lovely image of our Gen 10, Gen 10 Plus servers. If you're wondering what the box is on top, that's our microserver Gen 10 Plus, a very popular unit that we have that's desktop focused. But what makes these so unique? What changed with Gen 10? Well, it's all around what we call our ILO chip. So in this top-down view of our server, you can see I put a white circle over a chip that's called our ILO chip. You might be saying, what in the world is that, Alan? Well, that is our server management chip, the tool that allows you to manage your server. That's the first place the server goes when you press the power button, and then it starts to boot up all that essential firmware. But here's the difference between us and other vendors out there. That chip is completely designed by us at HPE. It is not an off-the-shelf chip from our fabricators. So we at HPE pride ourselves on research and design. We completely design that chip, and as it's being fabricated, we embed our very own firmware in that chip that cannot be changed. What does that mean for you in simple terms and your data protection journey? Well, did you know with our Gen 10 and newer servers, you can go in, you can set your servers to check the essential firmware code every single day while your server's running. So now you have the peace of mind knowing your servers are checking that essential firmware code every day to make sure it hasn't been compromised. That's a big deal. And the best part is once you set it, it does it every day. You don't have to worry about it. But it gets even better. If it detects a compromised piece of firmware code, if somehow a cyber attacker got to that level of your server and compromised that firmware, it will detect it and it will automatically restore it to the last known good state. Keyword there is automated, right? We don't want manual tasks. We want to automate those tasks for you. So the nice part is you say, okay, I buy HPE Gen 10 and newer servers. I can go in, I can make sure they're set up to check the firmware code every day, and it will recover to a last known good state if something happens. But once again, you just have to go in and enable it one time, and you're off and running. Jump ahead here. That's what we call, in simple terms, the secure runtime verification. And you'll notice with me in my slides, I always like to give you a lot of content. So when you get this slide deck, which you will, you'll have all the content that supports my talk track. So if you see me skip through a couple of slides, it's because I always like to leave a lot of content behind. Another offering, which I will tease here, but I'm going to get into more towards the end of my presentation, is called the server configuration lock feature. This is a customer favorite feature. So did you know that when your servers are built, you can go in and you can turn on a feature called server configuration lock. This locks down the configuration of your server. So if someone gets their hands on it, let's say you move your server from one location to the next, and they try to change the hard drives, the memory, or even change any of the firmware settings, next time you boot it up, it's going to alert you and say, hey, we've detected changes on this server. Either A, enter your password and boot, or B, you got to find out who's been tampering with your server. Once again, another way to protect you and your server from executing any of that ransomware or malware that could happen. Okay, and that's called the server configuration lock. Like I said, I don't try to get too technical, but I want you to know what you get, right, when you invest in HPE and their security and their servers. Another one here I laugh at, we call it the chassis intrusion detection device. Really, in basic terms, it's just a physical switch, as you can see in the picture, that goes under the lid of your server. So if you're wondering, how can I prevent people from tampering with my server? Well, now at least you know anytime the lid of your server is opened. And now that will send it to your ILO and it will alert you saying, hey, 2:56 p.m., your server lid's open. Well, once again, either A, you're going to figure out, oh yeah, Steve's down there doing maintenance, or B, you're going to find out how fast you can run down to your server in the data center or drive to your server in the remote site and figure out who's tampering with your server. These are small things, but they make a big difference when you're trying to secure your hardware and the data that's within that device. Another customer favorite, and we know that our customers such as yourself run into this all the time, you're done with the server, it's time to either repurpose it or end of life it. There's a lot of sensitive data on that server. How do I ensure I'm wiping all of that data? Well, in our servers, we have a virtual button, excuse me, grab a drink. It's called One Button Secure Erase. When you select that button, the server will go out and it will securely erase that entire server to NIST standards. It'll even spit out a report saying this server is securely wiped and repurposed. How nice is that you can just press one button and you know that that server is going to be securely sanitized and ready to be disposed of or repurposed. These are the type of tools we give you to make your life easier when it comes to compute security at HPE. So that was Gen 10 and Gen 10 Plus. Now I just want to pivot to our newest generation of servers, Gen 11, and how we're building on what I just talked about with you. So that's where that fundamental, uncompromising, protected message comes. And we have some security enhancements within each of these three categories that I'm going to walk you through. So on the fundamental side, what exactly are we doing? Well, we have a new feature called device identification, and this ties in so nice to the zero trust strategy that you're looking to adopt. The best way for me to explain this in basic terms is it's like when you're going to the airport. You go through the security checkpoint. What do they ask for? Your driver's license. Why? Because they're going to validate you are who you say you are before they let you in the airport to get on an airplane. Same idea here with device identification. With our servers, when you introduce them into your environment, you can set it up to where it will validate that device, making sure it is indeed authentic. It is the server that it says it is. It's not an imposter. It's not a cyber attacker coming in with a fake server. So don't let this slide overwhelm you on the right. It just shows you how you set that up. Don't worry about that, but just know that with Gen 11, we have device identification that's built in. This is not an extra cost. These are just those features that I'm trying to alert you of that are built into our servers. Another one of those is called platform certificates. When your server is built at our factory, we'll issue a certificate that says that server is exactly how we built it. And then when you install the server, your environment or NetGain comes and installs that server for you, you can validate that server, make sure it has not been altered. right? So pretty cool features. This is free as well. This is built into our servers. We just encourage you, our customers, to be aware of them and to utilize them. TPM chips are nothing new, so we'll skip past that. And one topic that I'm truly passionate about, this consumes a big portion of my time each week in a good way, is a new tool to manage your devices. So for those who are on this call today saying security is why I'm here, but man, I really need a better way to manage those servers and have access to them, we have a new cloud-based server management tool titled Compute Ops Management. And it is an amazing tool because it gives you the ability to manage all of your devices wherever they reside. So if you're a customer on the call today that says, hey, I've got countless remote sites, I hate driving to those locations, or I just have a data center, Compute Ops Management is a tool for you. It allows you to do rapid firmware updates, to have instant visibility into your environment wherever your servers are, and it allows you to manage it from a single pane of glass. And so I don't want to derail the conversation there, but on the server management side, that's our newest offering that we announced just about 10 months ago, coming up on the year anniversary, and our customers absolutely love that. On the uncompromising piece, what's new with Gen 11? Well, I talked about that ILO 5 chip, and this is as technical as I get, so I apologize. If you look at this and you say, oh man, this is over my head, let me just break it down very simple. What we want you to know is our servers, every time they boot up, and when you set up that daily firmware check, it goes through and it validates all of your firmware components, not just certain pieces or aspects. It validates all the essential firmware components, okay? That's different from our competition. With Gen 11, we added the ability to validate devices that you connect into the server. So think of your PCIe cards and other devices that you connect. We now validate those with Gen 11. So we're taking that firmware validation a step further. So I don't want to spend much time here because this does get technical and I don't want to get that technical, but it's a little bit of an eyesore, but just so you know, we're building upon that security technology from Gen 10 all the way to Gen 11. And then last but not least, what are we doing on the protection side of the house? The supply chain. I talked about how important the supply chain is to us, and I'm going to get into a piece of that in just a moment that talks about our Assembled in the USA offering, which is super impactful and is picking up a lot of steam. So before I go that route, I want to talk about some of my favorite server security features. I get this all the time. Hey, Alan, tell me some of your favorite server security features that are going to help you, or that are going to help me with my environment. And I talked about just about all of these, so I'm going to go through these pretty quick. But we'll start on the upper left-hand corner, the chassis intrusion detection switch. That's that physical switch, protects the physical access of the server and alerts you. The upper right-hand corner is the security dashboard. So in our ILO GUI, that's our user interface, we have given you a security dashboard that lists 10 to 13 items that you need to address, security specific. So now when you get our servers, you don't have to play that guessing game. Is the server set up to be secure? Go to the security dashboard. We give you 12 to 13 recommendations to do right out the gate to make sure your server is even more secure. It takes that guesswork out, eliminates that time of trying to secure your server. On the right-hand side, we have that silicon root of trust. That's the ILO 5 chip that I talked about. Remember, it's our design and our firmware, thus making it our chip. The bottom right-hand side is that one-button secure erase, the ability to securely wipe your servers, which is excellent. The bottom left-hand side, we talked about that automated recovery. So if your server is compromised, that essential firmware code, it will pivot back to the last known good state of firmware, which is super impactful. And then last but not least, on the left side, a customer favorite, once again, the server configuration lock feature. That feature locks down the configuration of the server. It will not boot the server until you enter a password, which is great because you can make sure that malware and ransomware are not executed. So those are some of just a few of my many favorite features that I love to share. But in wrapping up, I have a couple slides to talk about with our trusted supply chain offering, which is very important when we're looking at sourcing servers and components that are assembled inside the United States. So what is this offering? Well, we have a facility in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, where we assemble specific servers by HPE US citizen background checked, polygraph checked employees. And so if you want to know, okay, my server is being assembled in the USA, We have that facility for you, and it gets even better. We have additional white glove delivery services where you can have a dedicated truck, a dedicated driver that will then deliver that to you from Chippewa Falls within the 48 continental United States. So it's a little bit different than our normal server for the fact that we put an American flag, trusted supply chain sticker on it that lets you know it's coming from Chippewa Falls. We even call it a T on the end. So one of our most popular servers, for example, is a DL380T, or DL380, excuse me. For this offering, we would say it's a DL380T. You can't see it in the picture very well, but on the right-hand side on the ear, you'll see a little white T letting you know it's our trusted supply chain offering. It's not available on all of our platforms. This is a little bit of an eyesore of a slide, but this is just to let you know we have it on our most popular Gen 10, Gen 10 Plus, and Gen 11 platforms, and that's something that NetGain can easily help you out with, okay? But what do you get? You say, I want to order this versus a normal server. What's the difference? How is this really helping me security-wise? Well, let's walk through that. The first thing we do, we don't just give ourselves this title and say, oh yeah, it's assembled in the USA, trust us. We align to the National Defense Authorization Act. Okay, they're the ones that say in order to be assembled in the USA, you have to align to Section 889 of the National Defense Authorization Act. And if you get into the details, it gets very specific. It says you cannot source components from certain Chinese companies. It gets very specific. So please know we align to the National Defense Authorization Act first and foremost. Then we're going to enable or turn on these features within the server before you even receive it. So instead of trying to figure out what you need to do, this is all going to be done before you even receive the server. We're going to put it into high security mode. We're going to turn on UEFI Secure Boot. We're going to enable that awesome feature I talked about, server configuration lock. We're going to install the chassis intrusion detection device. And we're going to give you the option. We're not going to mandate it. We're going to give you the option to have a dedicated truck and driver. So let's walk through those real quick. High security mode, what is that? Well, there's a setting in your server that can encrypt it so it's more secure. That's it in basic terms. So instead of waiting for you to turn that mode on, we're going to bump it into that high security mode for you before you even receive the server. So remember, in basic terms, this is going to just encrypt your server and make it much more difficult for cyber attackers to get their hands on and alter anything. We're going to turn on the UEFI Secure Boot, which in basic terms, once again, validates the operating system. So our servers already validate all of that essential firmware code that I talked about. UEFI Secure Boot takes it a step further and validates the operating system to make sure it's authentic. Just another security measure, right, that we're turning on. We talked about this. We're going to turn on the server configuration lock. So when we do ship this, nobody's going to tamper with it. Otherwise, we'll know. And as we talked about this, and you already saw this slide, a little redundant here, we're going to install that chassis intrusion detection device and make sure that's installed. The cool part about this is this works even when you lose power because it's tied to a battery cell. So anytime someone opens that lid in transit, when the server doesn't have power, it's going to log it. So the next time you boot it up, it's going to say, hey, we noticed over the last 24, 48 hours, the server is open 2 or 3 times, which A, once again, you're aware of that, or B, you're saying, hey, who's tampering with my servers, right? And last but not least, we're going to tie this all together with those delivery services. You can have the server shipped like normal. We'll ship it just to our normal carriers, or you can have that dedicated truck and dedicated driver, or we can take it even a step further. You can have the dedicated truck and driver, and they can come in, set up the equipment, remove all the packaging. Those are just options. You don't have to have those. Standard deliveries included. And once again, the delivery is within the 48 United States, continental United States, if you have that dedicated truck and driver. And of course, for those of you who are on an as a service journey or saying, hey, you know what, I'm starting to do this whole consumption-based thing, these offerings are included with that as well. So I know that that was a lot of info in rapid succession, but we want you to have the absolute confidence that HPE, along with NetGain, we're going to give you the best when it comes to compute security, to starting that journey to zero trust. Remember what I said, it starts with the supply chain and the hardware. If you're not secure there, you already have holes in your security setup. Then as you get into your applications, to your data, your containers, that's the complete security solution where we want to go to with zero trust. So I want to thank NetGain for giving me the time to present to you today. I always try to keep it a little bit shorter. So the nice part is we have plenty of time for Q&A, and I'll open it up to the audience and turn it back over to NetGain. So thank you so much for the time today. You can tell I'm very passionate about compute security. It's a big deal that we have to pay attention to, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alan. So we actually did have a couple of questions. I'll just go ahead and throw them out to you. The first one here deals with zero trust. And let's see, do I have to totally rebuild my network for zero trust? So I take that to mean, and maybe I can be clarified here, but I take that to mean, if you currently aren't using that sort of policy, are you looking at totally tearing down your tech stack and maybe having to rebuild almost everything from the ground up? Is it not quite that destructive, or is it somewhere in the middle? What's your response on that one?
Absolutely. So every use case is specific, but I wouldn't say you'd have to tear it all down. If we go back to the castle analogy, that's the castle, right? You've built your moat. You've got the firewall and a network in place, network security in place. That is what I would say a starting point, right? We're starting there. Now we want to build upon that. So you're protecting the people from coming from the outside. That's a great start. Now, what are you doing to continually validate and verify those who are inside your infrastructure, inside your network? And to be honest, the biggest challenge we face with cybersecurity is still human error. Can you believe that? Someone clicking a link, downloading a file they shouldn't touch. That is still the number one challenge. But like I mentioned, we want to get everything we can out of our hardware, out of everything else, so we don't have to deal with that level of security. It's just really honing in on those lovely phishing scams and schemes and everything that's running.
Yeah, to definitely have a phishing reporting program at minimum,
Yep.
right? I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I think both Alan and NetGain's cybersecurity experts would probably agree with that one. And just one other one just asks, is physical server tampering a real concern? Probably in relation to the physical switch that you talked about, like the chassis
Yeah.
intrusion. Is that a real problem that you've heard of? I mean, obviously, if HP is developing solutions to fight it, but what's it actually look like in the real world?
Yeah, 100%. It's a real challenge. And that's why I spent a lot of time talking about supply chain. It is so easy to buy these little root kits that you can clip onto chips of the motherboard that are so small that you can't see them unless you're really close, like literally right looking at that motherboard directly. And people don't ever think about that, right? We're so used to what I mentioned, clicking a link that's corrupt, having that human error. But for those who are very sophisticated, they can install these rootkits on a server and it just clips on. They don't have to even solder anything. And that can gain access to that essential firmware, which is so hard to detect if you don't have mechanisms in place like those daily firmware checks. And we have seen that, right? I won't name people, but there have been situations where servers have arrived already compromised before customers even installed them in their environment. There were those rootkits installed. And how do you detect those? So that chassis intrusion detection device is huge because it's going to let you know anytime someone opened that server. And it gives you that moment to stop and say, I better look at the motherboard if this server has been opened in transit. It shouldn't be, right? Especially from HP. We send you a server, it's built, right? If you order it from our factory, or NetGain will do that for you and they can install that chassis intrusion detection device. And from the moment it leaves HPE's facility, NetGain's facility to when you arrive, it shouldn't be tampered with. And NetGain would agree with that. But if it has, now you know. Now you know I need to take an extra look at this server because somebody clearly opened it. So a lot of times people say that doesn't really happen in the real world. It does. It's much more sophisticated and not as common, but it's that much harder to detect when it does happen. So great question.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have personally never delved into that. It's not something that I would have guessed. So I'm happy that there's something. Again, I'm not a cybersecurity expert by any means, but it's not something that I would have guessed. And it's interesting that there's always like a physical part to a lot of this. Even when we talk about securing your actual facility, right, your office building or whatever it is, there always seems to be some level of real world. Um, Aspect to all of this cybersecurity stuff. But those are the questions that came in. I appreciate your time, Alan, and I definitely appreciate everybody who came. When uh, when you close out the webinar today, you'll get a satisfaction survey, quick 4 questions or so, just about how you felt about this. And I would appreciate it if you took that. And we will follow up, as Alan said, with this slide deck, as well as a recording of this in case you'd like to give it to your colleagues, save it for later. But we'll follow up in a few days with all that information. So, Alan, thank you again,
Of
and
course.
I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.